thing I've noticed after playing games my whole life is that some of them like to have a very central mechanic, all based around one button press. Whether it's flinging Pikmin, grabbing enemies, or whatever, I find myself gravitating towards some of these games the most. Because they're simple, sure, but also because I feel like these sorts of games have the potential to have some of the best, most intuitive game feel out there. Which is probably why I was so intrigued by Chameleon Twist, an N64 platformer from 1997 with the central mechanic of using your tongue to traverse your environment. Of course, all with the simple press of a button. Couple that with my enjoyment of other platformers from the era, and yeah, this is a game I've been wanting to review for quite a while now. Unlike something like Banjo, it released to pretty middling reception. Along with some pretty poor sales numbers, not a lot of people have really played or even heard of this game, really. But I'm here to change that, right? I usually talk about those big old popular games, yeah, but sometimes I like to shed some light on some stuff that I find real underappreciated. That being said, does Chameleon Twist deserve some more appreciation? Or is it just another platformer that blends in among the rest? Let's find out. Sunsoft, pretty little known company, and Japan System Supply. They're really only known for this game and this unreleased Virtual Boy game. Looks kinda familiar, huh? I really dig the little title jingle. I mean, it's nothing crazy, but it's one of the first things I think of when I think of this game. So there's 4 characters to choose from. Davy, Jack, Fred? What's wrong with this guy, man? I swear, if you know one thing about this game, it just might be about him. That depressed, shackled, miserable expression. And then we've got Linda. Gotta have some female representation, right? I gotta go with Fred though. I mean, come on, man, he's too iconic. So we begin as this dopey little chameleon is just sitting around doing what chameleons do, I guess. When all of a sudden this Alice in Wonderland rabbit is running late, runs by and jumps into this pot of magic for some reason. A chameleon's got nothing better to do, right? So it's no wonder curiosity gets the best of him and he jumps in as well shortly thereafter. We emerge in a world that looks the same, but in a different form. A weird, but kinda cute one, honestly. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for this sort of half chameleon, half human design, and it makes him a lot more capable for what's to come. Moving on to gameplay, yeah, so in this new form, the moveset revolves mostly around using your tongue. You'll be licking up enemies and spitting them back out at their brethren, for example. You can even hold R to make aiming a bit easier, or you might come across a pull of some sort where you've got to extend yourself across a gap, sorta like the hookshot in a Zelda game, right? Something that's real fun to do when you get the opportunity is this. Whoa. After you're on your way to a pull by tongue, you can press the A button along with the direction you want to rotate and do a little spin. This is real helpful for landing on adjacent platforms and pretty satisfying to pull off to boot. You can also do this sort of high jump move with your tongue. The timing is a little janky, but I eventually got it down. Sometimes you'll find yourself combining these moves in succession to reach collectibles and such, and I'd say this is the best the gameplay gets. Unfortunately, areas like this don't show up a ton, which leads me to one of this game's problems. Difficulty. This game it's made for babies, man. There's just not much here that offers a real challenge. Levels are room by room, and you've got this health bar. You take damage from enemies or falling into pits. If you run out, you get a game over. Makes sense, you get sent back to the beginning of the Nah, you just spawn back in the same room. Like, what's the point of having game overs then? What's the point of having health? I don't know. If you're not gonna punish the player, why have it? Crowns are this game's main collectible, and there are some that are pretty tricky to obtain, but when the only challenging part of a game is going out of your way to collect shit, especially when it only gets you this kinda crummy pool minigame as a reward, I don't know, I find that a bit disappointing. Now that's not to say the game doesn't show promise gameplay-wise, there's definitely some cool ideas here like these spikes. You gotta use your tongue to make them retract, then use the short amount of time you've got to get through them while they're down. I would have loved to see more ideas like this, using your tongue to activate platforms or something of the sort. I don't know. I really like the idea of this part here where you've got to contort your tongue in a certain arc-like manner to swing across, rather than just doing it straight like you normally would. I wish there were more show, don't tell little puzzles like this. My arch nemesis in this game is the camera though. It's not the absolute worst thing I've ever dealt with, but is just so weird. The camera's panned back and bound to a singular corner of the room you're in. Half the time, this is alright, since many rooms are just open squares with enemies and shit, or they're otherwise pretty straightforward. But the more intricate ones with floating platforms and collectibles and shit, they're not even visible on the damn screen, dude. You've just gotta do some guesswork as to where shit is that you can't even see. Now, I will say there is a more up-close and personal camera mode, but man, this thing is nauseating. Holy shit. This one room here is basically impossible without this camera due to shit being off screen, and I genuinely had to go lay down for like 10 minutes mid-recording because of how sick I felt. It just moves and jitters around so much because it always wants to be behind you. It becomes unbearable. Again, I've dealt with worse, and the camera does work most of the time. It's just a very peculiar camera, and not an ideal one in the slightest. Now, like I said, levels in this game are room by room, for the most part at least. There is an open segment in the very first level, and this desert level later on is entirely out in the open. It's more of an obstacle course rather than room after room of little challenges you've got to complete to progress. Both of these types of levels are pretty inoffensive overall, but I do find myself preferring these more open segments. For the camera, sure, but I find that these settings are also just a lot more interesting and not so claustrophobic. I think that's the best way I can put it, right? When you're restricted to these interior rooms for most of the game, it begins to feel a bit cramped. I don't know, I just think the gameplay could have flourished a lot more if the environments you traverse were more sprawling and interesting. Now, that's not even to say I'd wanted more open style like some of its contemporaries. Nah, I dig the linear style of this game and all. I just think level design may be a bit closer to something like Mario 3D World would benefit it a lot, right? Using your tongue to climb a hill instead of a catsuit, you know, some more openness and verticality would have been welcome is all. Levels are fairly good despite this though. There are some pretty cool set pieces and challenges sprinkled throughout, even if they're all pretty easy. I enjoy the level theming too, pretty unique. Bombland is a pretty cool level, and even though it hurts my eyes a bit, Kids Land reminds me of Shy Guy's toy box from Paper Mario, which I am a pretty big fan of. Another problem with this game though, it is short as hell, man. I mean, 6 levels? Seriously? I beat it in an hour or so, and that's including the time it took me to play the game again when the game froze for no reason and I had to start over from scratch. Anyway though, each level ends with a boss fight, and you guessed it, they're all pitifully easy. Except this ant boss, which was a decent challenge honestly, and the final one isn't bad, I guess. Aside from that though, yeah, they are a cakewalk. Graphically speaking, this game looks alright. I mean, good enough, but none of these textures are gonna blow you away or anything. This ain't no Conker's Bad Fur Day, right? It did come out pretty early in the console's lifespan, so I'm willing to give it a pass. I kinda don't like the weird parallax effect with the quote-unquote skybox. I kinda just wish it was static or moved with the environment, cause man, it just looks a bit off. Think Donkey Kong Country, parallax scrolling backgrounds that move, but only when you move. It's just the kind of visual that makes a lot more sense when you're restricted to 2D. I do really like these little chameleon dudes, like I said. They're fun little dance after every boss fight, man. Oh, I love this little detail, the separate blinking, you know, like a real chameleon. Just a really cute and subtle little thing you probably wouldn't notice. The music ain't bad, it's pretty middle of the road, but I dig some of the instrumentation here. And that's Chameleon Twist. It's not a particularly great game, yeah, it's pretty underwhelming, but it has a really novel idea, doesn't it? Building the game's mechanics around the use of your tongue is a real silly but real creative idea. I'd love to see a more modern interpretation of it, you know? One that fleshes it out a lot more, cause in the end, there is something here, man. Something one of a kind that I don't think should be forgotten. It only left me wanting more. And hey, this game did get a sequel, maybe I'll take a look at it sometime, who knows? For now, I'll just be hoping for a modern reboot of the series that takes a better stab at it. One with a longer length and a higher degree of difficulty. I mean, come on, if KO the Kangaroo can get a reboot, Chameleon Twist can absolutely get one too. And that's about everything I wanted to cover. What Well, there is a multiplayer mode. I may as well check it out real quick. Survival and Time Trial. Survival's pretty straightforward. First to get knocked off the stage loses. Time Trial is a bit more interesting though. It's a minute-long King of the Hill type match where your goal is to spend the most time on the platform, knocking your opponent off in the process. Yeah, a pretty solid multiplayer mode honestly. I think if I've got a hankering for some N64 multiplayer though, I'd probably go for Smash Bros or Conquer instead. Have you played Chameleon Twist though? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like down below, it helps a lot. Also, do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you don't miss out on any future uploads. And as always, hopefully I'll see you all again soon. Bye.